This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
We are back with another episode of the Daily Leader. Super excited to be here today. And we got a fantastic guest. And yeah, I think I'm just rocking and ready to jump in. So, Brad, with that, would you take a moment and introduce our guest?
Absolutely. So I'm really excited today to introduce Tim Urmston to the Daily Leader audience. Tim is the CEO of 5 Capitals. He's a mentor of mine. He is someone who's casting vision regularly to all of us as coaches and consultants in the 5 Capitals network. And he started his career at P&G, eventually left P&G to start a firm focused on qualitative research called Seek. Eventually sold and exited Seek and became the CEO of 5 Capitals, which is how I got introduced to Tim. And something else that's really interesting about Tim is his career as a football coach, which I hope that we'll be able to talk about lessons learned from the field. And Tim, I'd like to just give you the opportunity to kind of put some flesh on that exoskeleton and really tell your own story to our audience. So, man, start with, college and early career. Tell us about what it was like to kick off at P&G. Tell us about your family and tell us, even about what life is like in Polly's today for you.
Yeah, and I'll try and be brief, but will say you asked the college question, man. I was hoping you wouldn't ask that question. So I went to 5 different colleges. It took me 11 years to graduate and 11 years of night school because I went my first year of college and actually flunked out. I got a 0.3, not a 3 point, a 0.3. So I got a D in judo. And just didn't show up for any other classes. I majored in other things. We'll just say that. So got home for my freshman year of college, and my dad kind of said, you're not getting another dime out of me. And so had to pay my way through college. So I worked at UPS and went to Cincinnati State. It's called Cincinnati Technical College back then. And then I went to the University of South Florida, to University of Cincinnati, and then eventually graduated with both my undergrad and my master's from Xavier in Cincinnati. So, but again, 11 years of night school, and was very interesting time for me. So, had 2 kids. I had one in each arm when I graduated from college. So it was phenomenal. But that just gives hope to all those people out there who are like, I'm not sure this is for me. That's right. You can still do a lot with your life. So, yeah. So that's the college side. So I got into P&G, started working there. As a research associate, and then kind of moved up the ranks, got my MBA while I was there. And then I met a guy named Bob my last year there. That was 1991 through 97. There was a guy named Bob, and I'll tell this. I'm a storyteller, so this might go a little longer than you guys think.
Oh, we love it.
But, so Bob was 54 and a half years old, and he used to wait for me at the end of this long, narrow parking lot. We'd walk, in together, 7:30 in the morning, like clockwork every morning. I'd pull in, he'd get out of his car, we'd walk in. And Bob was going to retire when he was 55. And Bob was a multimillionaire. He had been through multiple stock splits as just an employee of P&G in the heyday, right? So, but every day we'd walk in, and I got to know him really well. Loved the Cubs, grew up in Chicago, loved his dad, all kinds of stuff. And every day he would walk in, we'd walk in together, and he would say how much he hated his job and how much he struggle with the people he worked with. And they would tell me how many days he had left till retirement. So it was grumble, 142 days, grumble, 112 days, 99 days, whatever. One day I stopped and I said, Bob, why don't you just retire? What are you doing? Like, if you don't like it that much, then just quit. And he said, well, if I stay, I get the watch, I get the party, and I get like $65,000 or whatever. And I was like, I think that's like a day's interest for you with your stock. You could get your own watch and I'll throw you a party. I mean, like what are you doing? And he decided to stay. And so 31 days before his retirement, I pulled in the parking lot and he wasn't there. And I walked in and not thinking too much about it because that would happen every so often. And I asked a coworker, has anybody seen Bob? And they said, oh, Tim, I'm so sorry you didn't hear. Bob passed away last night. He had a massive stroke and passed away. And I went upstairs and quit that day. I just walked upstairs and quit. And And then I called my wife afterwards, which I would not recommend. I'd actually do the opposite. I'd call my wife first, and then. But her answer was awesome. She's like, "Hey, God will take care of us. He always has," and that gave me a lot of confidence. And I had been thinking about starting a research company, which was Seek. It originally was Focal Point, and I started that with a partner for 3 years and gave that away back to the partner. They wanted to go a different direction, and so I started Seek after that in 2000, and that was a 24-year career as the CEO, growing multiple cities, all kinds of stuff. It was a lot of fun, a lot of success. We had a major blip in 2015. The company struggled a little bit, but we had some incredible cultural wins, incredible financial wins, incredible operational wins, and all the 7 essentials, right? Brand identity. And it was called Seek, which, that name comes straight out of the Sermon on the Mount. So you can take that. Seek first the kingdom, and all these things will come to you as well. And so that's kind of how we led into everything that we were doing. So and so Seek was birthed out of that. A great culture. Had a lot of fun doing that. In 2017, exited a business partner who was very instrumental in some of the growth of the company. And then the next few years, a couple years, restoring the company, to its original worth, and then sold it to a bigger firm, a bigger research firm. We had about 10 companies we were interviewing for it, and ended up going with a bigger research firm that bought us. And then I stayed on for a 3-year earnout there, and then one more year of just transitioning the staff, and then came here to Pawleys Island as kind of a retirement job, but it's turned into a full-time job again. So I'm now the CEO of 5 Capitals, and we are making it happen, man. It's a lot of fun. It's, again, if you're not loving what you're doing, don't do it. So, and I love what I'm doing. I probably, more than, because I have a personal vision statement that says to add value to every life my life intersects. And what better way to show that is in coaching. So love the coaching aspect and love growing a company. So that was a long answer, but there it is.
Oh, that's
perfect.
That was wonderful, man. That was, I love that. And you were a football coach. When, where, how does that fit into that? Yeah. I'm always curious when there's sports, because then Brad feels a little insecure, and I like living in that place because he doesn't deal with sports much. So
yeah. So I started coaching right out of college, right after that first year of disastrous college. When I had to come back to Cincinnati, I had my old football coach call me and said, "Hey, you ought to come and help us coach down here." So I coached at that particular high school, very disciplined high school, strong heritage, all kinds of good things, right? From that school. Learned a lot. When you told a kid to run a hill, they ran a hill. You blew the whistle, they just took off, kind of a thing. 10 years of that. Took 10 years off to raise my kids, right? So this is all happening while I'm going through that career stuff. And then my wife and I went to a football game in the school district that we moved into. We were sitting in the stands and realized we were the only people sitting in the stands. They were 0-40, hadn't won a game in 4 years. And my wife, who asked me to stop coaching 10 years before, gives me an elbow on the side and says, "You need to do something about this." And I said, wait, what? And so I went and asked the head coach if I could be the special teams coordinator or statistician, whatever. I'll help in any way I can. And within 2 weeks, I was the offensive coordinator. So we started rebuilding a program. And, I'd mentioned to you guys, we had a vision statement for the program that we put together. It was developing leaders of men through the pursuit of football. So my belief is if you develop the leader, the wins will come, not the other way around, right? If you pursue the wins and you neglect the leaders, you'll actually have chaos on your hands, and, you'll do a disservice to those boys who are trying to become men. So everything I learned about leadership, not everything, but the majority of things I learned about leadership started in coaching football.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's really neat. And that is so applicable, I think, to the business world as well, right? I mean, often I think that we really want to look at our bottom line, but the truth is we probably need to focus on developing our people. And if we develop and coach and take care of our people, the profits often follow that. So I wanted to mention that only because it seemed just a really neat part of your journey that seems to impact your coaching, and you're still coaching today, right? So, all right. So tell us a little bit more. I'd love to just know a little bit more about your time at P&G? Like, what was that like kicking off your career there? Just kind of fill in some of those gaps, because I found it interesting that, the same time that your friend passed away was the same time that you left. So can you
Yeah.
just, you're a great storyteller. Tell us the P&G story, that saga of your life.
Sure. So it was a 7-year career. And it was awesome, and it was probably the best place to work and to start a career. I mean, it was phenomenal, and I didn't leave for any other reason than I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I loved the work. I loved the people. I loved the spaces that I was in, but I also feared the golden handcuffs. Like, I feared it getting so good that I wouldn't be able to leave one day. And my prayer as I walked out the door was just, man, don't let me have any regrets, and I haven't. I've never looked back and went, I wish I would have done that, right? But the time there was filled with leadership moments because P&G hires the best of the best, and back then you didn't leave P&G, right? It was a career, it was a life career. That's different now, but back then everybody thought I was crazy leaving. But I learned, a lot of different things about everything from financial structures to corporate structures to leadership styles, to the way you treat people and build cultures and organizations. I was under some of the best leaders, that to this day that I've ever been under, as far as leadership goes. There were a couple micromanagers in there, here and there, but in order to be a great leader, you have to be a great follower first. And so these folks taught me how to follow, and they were leaders worth following, most of them. So I got a great sort of baptism by fire of leadership during that time. And P&G was a springboard back then. You could, if you worked there, you could pretty much write your own ticket to go work for any company you wanted to. I just wanted to do my own thing, though. So that's kind of how it's been since then.
Can you, before we keep moving on in your journey, can you unpack this statement? Leaders need to first be good followers. Why is that?
I think it's really hard to ask someone to follow you if you've never demonstrated following someone else.
Mm.
Right? Because you don't have a right to ask somebody to follow you because you weren't willing to do it yourself. So, anything as a leader, whatever you emulate, your people are whatever you demonstrate, your people are going to emulate. So if you demonstrate that if you're a middle manager and you're not willing to follow, the person who's over you, especially if they're a good leader, and, there's all the kind of reasons to follow them. And then you're not willing to do that, but you want your people to actually respect and trust and walk in your footsteps, then you know what? That's a little hypocritical in my book. And so I think it's about authenticity. It's about being real as a leader.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's really good. So if I want somebody to follow me, I better be willing to be able to follow somebody else as well. That is worthy of that trust. So that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And then Seek, can you tell us a little bit more, kind of same way, the story, the heart, a little bit? I mean, I know you unpacked that a little bit in the beginning. Can you just kind of same way, story behind Seek would be awesome.
Gosh, we could spend 2 days on this. I mean, Seek is my baby. Seek is my baby. It has been forever. And it's given birth to this in 2000 with just me as a moderator, traveling all over the world, doing focus groups and whatever. And one day I was in a pharmaceutical conference for Eli Lilly, and I think it was in Florida or something. And I realized for the last 3 months, I'd been gone 18 days out of the month for 3 months in a row. And I said, man, how am I supposed to be a dad doing this? I can't be a father and be on the road 18 days a month. It just doesn't work. So I kind of decided to take the leap. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck, as they go, how do I go build a team? Should I build a team? How do I build a team? And I'm like, this was out of necessity. I was just like, I can't be the only one out here doing this if we're going to. So either I quit and go get a job, or I hire somebody to come in and do it with me. And so I found a guy, his name was Greg Hewitt. Love Greg to this day. First employee, great story. Greg was in kind of a rough time, but he had all the tangible stuff. And as close as you can hear the audible voice of God, he said, that's your guy right there. So, and I had interviewed like 20 people before him. And he came on, he followed me around for a year, learned, kind of did the leadership square. I'm sure Brennan talked about that in your previous podcast, but, I did it. He watched, I did it. He helped, he did it. I watched, and then he did it. Right. And that's kind of the way that it worked. And eventually people were asking for him. And so I thought, man, I want to do this again. So just started hiring people, training them the same way. And eventually we ended up with, I'm going to say at one point 45 consultants, all doing work all over the world for all different kind of brands, for Fortune 500 brands mostly. And we grew people, and in order to have a people-based business, you have to have a great culture.
Mm-hmm.
So my favorite part of leading Seek was building a culture of leadership, but more so a culture of care and kindness, where people were seen. They came in and we always said we want this to be the best place you've ever worked, and we want your significant other to say the same.
Mm.
Wow.
And that first part's easy. The second part was really hard, right? Because we had people traveling who had kids at home and things like that. We started saying that. So, mantras like we want everybody to speak into the direction of the company. When your feet hit the floor, you can't wait to get to work because you love to do what you do. You get to be a storyteller for people. Our vision was to humanize innovation for the world, or how do we bring humans into the boardroom of the companies we're serving so that their voice can be heard? So a lot of good stuff. We have 5 values. I won't go into all of them, but my favorite value is dare to love. And all of our values were statements, right? They were action statements. So dare to love was, care enough about the person to go to them, to talk to them, straight out of Matthew 18, by the way. If someone, harms you or hurts you, go to that person and seek to understand. Like, go and find out. Say, hey, help me understand what's going on, because that didn't feel like you. So conflict was relatively, non-existent at Seek, because everybody really cared deeply about each other and spoke the truth and love to one another. So
yeah. That's great. That's a powerful story, and it's a powerful story of leadership, of somebody following the square, right? And going, hey, that works. It works to have them watch you do it, and it works to have them help you, and then you help them, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, we did that together, and now that person can go do it for somebody else. And that clearly had a cascading effect of a lot of great leaders that were all in Seek. So I love that our listeners get to hear that actually works. It's one of the things Brad talked about on our very first episode that I think so many people that have listened to this podcast have connected with, because it's a very tangible way to help develop your talent. So I appreciate it.
Hey, Taylor, can I add one more thing that I think is really important about Seek? Is Seek became a factory of talent that went on to do bigger and better things beyond Seek, right? And I think a lot of leaders get scared about that. I think they go, I don't want to lose these people, or they're too valuable to the organization. And so we kind of hold people down sometimes. We did that at the beginning until we started noticing our people going on and taking jobs as like the innovation, VP at Citibank, or the innovation, director at Cone Health, and whatever. And so they were taking the stuff that we did and went on and did these amazing things. And we started realizing our purpose as a company was really about releasing the full potential of our people, which might be beyond us, right? And when we started embracing that, oh my gosh, it just changed the way we did everything. So, for those leaders that are out there just kind of going, oh man, I got to keep that talent. I got to keep that talent. Well, maybe not. If you're really good at what you do, you're not going to hold on too tight to that. You're going to help those people get where they need to go.
Yeah. Tim, that's so insightful. And you're reminding me of, when Taylor mentioned that we recorded our first podcast, and I surprised him on the first podcast with an interview. I didn't prep him at all. I just said, all right, Taylor, whatever you were planning, we're not going to do. We're going to talk through some frameworks and, in true 5 Capitals fashion, some paradoxes, some matrices that really help us frame up what the tension of leadership is across a variety of scenarios. And we were talking about the 4 stages of competence and the leadership square and all of the surrounding principles, like the pit and the nuances of how do we take people through situational leadership. We end up getting a comment back from our little clip on Instagram with this guy just really authentically saying, hey, look, I'm not evaluated based on how many leaders I develop and launch. I'm evaluated on my performance inside the business. So therefore, this isn't relevant to me. And it was just like such a powerful moment for me, such an acute moment for me of recognizing the tension that we're in as leaders between development and delivery, which is something we talk about constantly in the 5 Capitals frameworks. what am I responsible for as a leader of an organization? Well, I'm responsible for both development and delivery. And I recognize that in the process of doing development and delivery, just like you did at Seek, people are going to get so good at what they do. They're going to have such big opportunities that there will inevitably be another company, another leader who says, hey, man, if you like what you're doing at Seek or over here, you're going to like this paycheck and this job and this title and this office and the car that's going to come along with it even more than you like what you're doing now. And I have a choice in that moment as a leader. I can either sponsor them and help them as they make that launch, or I can resist it and most likely still lose the person. So the move then for us as leaders becomes, how do we anticipate the exit of our high performing talent? And how do we actually craft it not only for their good and their benefit, but for the greater good of the company? And I love that that's, what evolved and what Seek matured into. This, I think the term you used was this factory of leaders. It reminds me of Jack Welch and kind of the reputation that he had of being a company of general managers. We can do lots of things because we develop the best general managers ever of any company. So it doesn't matter what the business is. We're going to have the best leaders.
Right.
It sounds like you embodied that philosophy during your time developing Seek.
Yeah. And just, again, speaking to those leaders out there, because I do think we get scared sometimes. I think we become afraid, but man, when you get to the mindset of we are here to launch rockets, like literally just watch these people soar and shine. I had my retirement party that they threw for me. It was this 3-hour epic love fest that they had videos from people who used to work at Seek. It was just a string of video after video after video of all the, not the things that I did, but things that Seek did for them, like the culture, the piece, which you don't get that very often, and I don't know if you guys have heard that the saying, the difference between authority and influence. You guys ever talked about that, right? How do you know if you've got authority? How do you know if you have influence? Well, authority is when people leave, they never call and ask for advice. They never call and say, hey, what would you do here? What do you think of this? Influence, people call you after, they don't owe you anything. You don't owe them anything, and say, hey, could you advise me on that? Because I'm about to take this next thing or do whatever. And that's influence, right? And you want to be an influential leader, not an authoritative leader. So that's a culture.
That's very good. Now I'm curious, Tim, why did you decide to take the leap to 5 Capitals? You could have gone and done anything. You sold a business. You could have taken your bride and your family. You could have retired in Tahiti, and you could be having a Mai Tai right now. I don't know if they drink Mai Tais in Tahiti. I'm just saying a drink that sounds fancy.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah.
I never thought of Tahiti, but I don't know. That sounds so boring to me, right?
There you have it.
I would lose my mind. When I go on vacation, I'm notorious for like feet in the sand, butt in the chair, drinking my hand, going, where are we going next year? Kind of a thing. It's a thing that I get real uneasy when I'm not working and building something. I'm a builder. Like we all know what we're called to, right? And the sooner you figure that out, the better off you're going to be as a leader. But I'm a starter. I'm a builder. When things get stagnant or stale, I get bored. I mean, I could have stayed at Seek for another 10 years and lived out my days and been fine. But I was bored, you guys. I was bored. I mean, I had trained up a leader underneath me who was running the company, and I was kind of just a figurehead. And I'm like, I don't ever want to just be a figurehead. That sounds awful. Like that is an awful thing to be. So I thought this was a great opportunity to kind of get my hands dirty again and get in the trenches with people, see if we could cut our teeth and add value to people's lives. I mean, it ultimately, that's what we're setting out to do is add value. So.
And tell our listeners a little bit about like so 5 Capital's been going for a long time. They brought in you to kind of take them to the next season of the business. So what does a day in the life look like right now? You get a business it's growing, it's doing well, but man, there's so much that you want to do that you haven't done yet. So what's that look like relative to, you started Seek from nothing. Here you are coming in midstream to this pre-existing business and taking it to new heights. What are you learning and what are you doing in this season that's new and exciting?
Well, you got to remember, I was 28 maybe when I started Seek. Like, it was just one of these guys like, let's go. I didn't know a whole lot. I didn't know a bunch about leadership. I hadn't read any books. I mean, none of that stuff. It was just, I got an idea. Let's try this. It's the way it was. But,
I love it.
you learn along the way and you make a lot of mistakes along the way. And so learning all those mistakes, coming to a place like Five Capitals, it was a company that it was going okay. It was, there was a lot of good things going on, but not a ton of profitability, but a lot of, fun or whatever. And, coaches, kind of coming and going and whatever. And I thought, wow, this could really be something if, given the attention that it needs and going in, and also taking all the things I learned from back here and bringing it in. And so I went to Brandon and I said, hey, for 51% of the company, I'll do all this stuff. And let me kind of take a shot at this. And he agreed. And so, so took over majority ownership of the company and started running. And so we're changing the business model. We're changing the business structure. We are going to get real focused on the kind of coaches that we're after, to build into our program. We're going to do everything we can ultimately to add value to people's lives and make sure we're helping business leaders thrive, make sure that, we've got a lot of experience, a lot of business experience here that is untapped, that is now starting to, work its way into some of our clients' businesses. And we're seeing major improvements in the things that they're doing. So, and you asked the question earlier, what's a day in the life look like? Well, I'm a coach first. I mean, I love coaching. So I've got about 15 or 16 companies that I coach personally. Awesome. And then we invest in coaches who are coaching businesses. And sometimes I'll coach through a coach until that coach, develops in that one area. They're great in 17 other areas, but there's that one that they need help with. And so we'll help develop them in that so that they can thrive. So that's pretty much what my day looks like. Sometimes I'll fly around, do some workshops and speaking and all that kind of stuff, but that's the heart of it. I'm taking everything I learned and messed up at Seek and applying it here, and man, it's going a lot faster. You'd be amazed what's happening. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
We're having a good time too, which is important.
So. And you're in a beautiful place. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah. I mean, there's a palm tree right outside of my office here. So it's, I don't mind that. And I love living down here. I live 5 minutes from the beach by walking. So it's, it's perfect.
It's perfect.
That's rough. Yeah, that's really rough. I feel bad for you, Tim. I really do. I do.
Somebody's got to do,
No. One of the things that I don't want our listeners to miss out on that I feel like I heard you say is it seems like you know yourself really well, and that's allowing you to thrive. Like, that you like to build, right? And so it's okay to go build the next thing, to go build the next person. I think a lot of times that takes a lot of work and people don't necessarily know what they want to do. But, like you said, if you love it, if you know yourself, if you know what kind of gets you excited and the blood pumping, then you can go execute and really live into that. So I think that's a really cool part of your story. Can you share with me some of the mentors in your life then that have had the greatest impact on you?
Yeah, I would tell you the greatest mentor who's ever had an impact on my life is a guy named Keith Brown, a guy I met through a church group. He's about, I'm going to say maybe 10 years older than me. And when my marriage was falling apart in the first 5 years, he was a guy who said, hey, why don't you come to this coffee house with me downtown, in kind of a seedy part of town, to be honest, at 10 o'clock at night. He picked me up at 9:30. We go to this seedy part of town at 10 o'clock. We go to this old ancient coffee house that smelled like cherry cobbler and stale coffee and cigarettes. And he introduced me to Jesus, right? It was a really great time. But he did it through asking me questions, not by telling me anything, right? He let me explore. It's very Jesus-like, right? Jesus was asked 300 questions in Scripture, and only 3 times did he answer directly. The rest were all questions back to people or a story. And that's exactly what Keith did with me was, and his hardest question for me to answer was, hey man, how's that going for you?
Hmm.
So I would tell him everything I was doing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm trying to do this. I'm making this happen. He would just look at me and go, how's that going for you? I hate that question. I hate it. But the natural answer was, well, not very well. He's like, well, then you got to change something. So what are you going to change? And so, because he was always pointing it back at me. Every time I complain about something or someone, he'd hold a mirror up and go, the only person you can change is you.
Hmm.
In leadership and being a father and being a husband and being all this stuff. And I used to come home, I'd get home at like 1 o'clock in the morning, jacked up on caffeine, laying in the bed. I wake my wife up and I go, you won't believe this. This is crazy. And she go back to sleep, Um, and, but it just made you think. It made you stare at the ceiling at night and wonder, right? And that has been something that I hope this podcast does that to somebody. I hope
Hmm.
they're laying awake at night going, I wonder, am I a good follower, right? First, or, you know, am I influencing people or am I using authority? Like, I hope there's those little nuggets in there, and that's all Keith would do. And
Hmm.
um, there's so many stories. We could do a podcast. We'd probably do 20 podcasts on all the things that Keith taught me, but he was the mentor on a personal level. He was
Sure.
that mentor that did that for me.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing that. It is amazing to me the way that it sounds like he just invested in you just because.
Just because.
And I think that oftentimes we get all these coaches and we really want performance. We have an end game, and that's not a bad thing. But I also think people kind of feel that, rather than, hey, if I genuinely, like you said, you wanted a culture of, what was it? You want a culture of love, which I'm sure was probably in and out of your company, right? And if we actually care about the people that you are coaching, I would assume that you see better results even still, right? Rather than just caring about where you want to get them, but actually caring about the person.
Right. I mean, you got leaders out there who are high challenge. This is about knowing yourself, right? I mean, it's self awareness. But if you're a high challenge leader, you're probably running a few people over. You're probably not taking the time to acknowledge them, to inspire them. You're doing a lot more challenging, right? And it's more production oriented, and it's more cogs in the wheel, that kind of thing. Or maybe you're a super invitational leader, right? Which is, you guys know
Mm,
the invitation challenge wheel. You're over there, or framework, but you're over on that side, and you're kind of loving people and caring about them, but you're also coddling problems. You're not holding people accountable. You're lowering the bar for people, right? And that's not helpful either. What we want you in is that coach's corner, right? And we describe commander as the challenger, caregiver as as the invitation person, but coach is the ideal. That's the sweet spot, right?
yeah.
Where you're saying, I'm not lowering the bar for you, but I'm going to put my arm around you and help you get to it,
Mm,
right? And that's ultimately what we're trying to do as leaders. The best leaders and the best mentors, the best coaches are all living in that coach's corner, right?
yeah. That's great. The other thing I really don't want anybody to miss on that I think is huge, and see if this tracks. And I think it's what you said, but to me, the right question is always exponentially more powerful than the right answer.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because remember, when we start thinking critically for ourselves, the best leaders are the leaders who know how to do that just
Mm,
naturally. They're not going to just jump at something. They're not going to make snap decisions, in all these places. They might, if they've got enough experience or they're a subject matter expert. But for the most part, are we really thinking through things, right? Some of the best leaders I know are reflective leaders where they take their time to process and think critically. Well, we have to teach people how to do that. We live in a very fast-paced society where people are making decisions very quickly without honestly much thought about what effect it's going to have on other people, impact it's going to have, all that kind of stuff. The people need time to mourn sometimes if you're changing things on them. There's so much to leadership, to change management, to conflict resolution. Um, yeah, there's just so much there, and so we've got to give them that time to kind of process.
yeah, no, that's great, great. And my follow up question, and we asked this to everybody that comes on the show because it is what the show is about, and it's a very big answer, and you take it or big question, you take it wherever you want. But what is leadership?
I think leadership is measured by who's following you.
Hmm.
Okay, because otherwise you're not a leader if no one's following you. Okay, and that can't be forced, right? John Maxwell talks about permissional based leadership versus positional based leadership, right?
Hmm.
I think look, you guys know this, and I was also a pastor for 7 years during that whole season. So there's some problems there. We'll talk about that later, but maybe a little bit too much of putting the plow to the ground. We talk about leadership. We talk about permissional based leadership, and we're talking about, hey, uh, did you earn the right to lead that person? Does that person give you permission to lead them? Have you demonstrated the qualities of a great leader to the point where they go, hey, I'll follow you anywhere. Like I will follow you anywhere. If you say that we're going to do this, I trust you. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm with you on that. And that's really hard to do, you guys. It's not natural. It's, not in this day and age, it's really rare. And so it takes longer, right? It's a higher investment,
Yeah.
but you realize that you build a really solid team who's also leading the way that you led them. And then their people lead the way that you led them. And that's how you get the exponential growth in an organization. And values are the glue that kind of hold all that together, right? In terms of what it looks like. So I don't know if that's helpful in answering the question or not, but
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Tim, as you look across the work that you're doing at Five Capitals, to kind of we would use the term, probably you and I, like, drive the stakes and expand the tents, driving the stakes and we're expanding the tents. We don't want to expand the tents so much that it pops out of the ground and serves no purpose, but we also want to see some growth, right? So as you're doing that work at Five Capitals and you're helping clients do that work kind of out in the wild, that 15 to 20 companies, you have a ton of insight through the coaches of Five Capitals too, and all the things, we encounter problems out here on the frontiers, and we're like, I don't know, man, I got to call Tim. I don't know how to solve your problem, but I know a guy who can help, right? And so you get all the hardest problems that the coaches are having trouble solving. What are you seeing right now? What is common? What are some of the themes that you're wrestling with, and you're saying, man, I keep running into this. Here's the solution we're developing for that. Give us some context on what you're seeing leaders struggle with.
yeah. Well, first of all, let me clarify. It's not call Tim. It's like call Tim, and then Tim's going to find the right coach to call because there's a ton of experience around us to do this. But
yes, the wisdom of the tribe.
Wisdom of the tribe. It's interesting with the new workforce that's coming up, the millennials and Gen Zs especially, right? There's a hardworking, right? I think they get a bad rap, to be honest, on a lot of things. But there's some truth to the fact that they can kind of work anywhere if they wanted to, right? And they're not held to the paycheck; they're looking for more. And so, leadership, as it used to be done, is not done the same way. You can't do it the same way with that group of people. And so, coming in as the commander, for example, we see a lot of this where there's a sort of disconnect between the leader and the people on the front lines who are doing the work. As a leader, when you get higher up in an organization or your organization gets bigger, you get farther away from the front line, and there's things you don't have. You're not competent in that your people on the front line are. And so learning to trust your people, listen to your people, hear what they have to say, all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably the biggest thing I see is the distance between the leader who founded the company, who's now, an air traffic controller or even the FAA, right? And there's all these pilots flying around and going, hey, it's not the same as it used to be. There's more turbulence. The atmosphere is changing, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And the founder going, well, just do the thing we've always done. And they're like, that's not working. What do we do? So I think that's a big one, is the gap between the two of them. I'm also finding accountability as part of that, right? So there's an accountability gap that's built into this. Um, and so, lower level managers sort of befriend the people on their team because they're doing the invitation thing. But in doing so, they kind of subvert their own leadership, right? Because they no longer can challenge those people. They can't hold them accountable to the goals that were set, which inevitably gets them in trouble from the leaders above them because they're like, "Where's that thing that I need?" I also get a lot of culture stuff, like a lot of culture stuff. So a lot of times we're called in as coaches because there's a lot of turnover in an organization, and no one knows where it's coming from. So they go, why are we seeing, 20 of our 40 people turn over every year? That's 50% turnover rate, right? So we're replacing one out of every two positions, a year. And that's a culture problem. The first thing I look into is I go, hey guys, let's talk about your culture. What are you doing culturally to create, a sense of happiness, a sense of ownership, and a sense of productivity, right? Because those are the three things that make up a great culture. I have to feel productive.
Hmm.
I've got to be happy. I got to be doing things that are fun with people that I love to do it with. And I've got to have a sense of ownership, even if I'm not an owner. I got to feel like I own the mission, the vision, the purpose, and that it's counting on me to do my part to make this bigger thing happen. So we do a lot of work in that space as well. A lot of it's in a lot of talent acquisition and development, training, all that kind of stuff. So those are probably the big four that we see.
That's great. And in that and all the work that you do, are there like what's the best way to say this? Like, what is are there any frameworks that you use to leverage with your clients that are like that one you keep coming back to again and again? Like, what is the most powerful framework that you use to help engage with your teams?
Oh my gosh, there's so many good ones. I mean, obviously the leadership square, we're using that all the time for development, but my favorite is probably the ACE framework. I use this all the time because a lot of times I'll get called in to work with leaders they're really really talented, but they're missing the mark with their people. Like they don't know what their people need, and so I talk about this framework a lot. But it's the ACE. We call it the ACE framework. It's AICE. It's an acronym, right? You may pronounce that differently. I just called it the ACE. But there's an I in there too. But it's please acknowledge me. So think about it like everybody's got four pieces of tape across their forehead. And I tell my leaders, I want you to look at your people as if they have these pieces of tape across their forehead. Because if you do these four things for your people, there's a good chance they won't leave, right? If you're doing these things. So the first thing is please acknowledge me. So see me. When you walk into a room, at least see that I'm a human being sitting there that has, emotions and can hear and can see and all that kind of stuff. A smile, a nod is the simplest form of that, but it's also, hey, that thing you told me about last week with your kid, how's that going? You doing okay? Checking in, right? That project you were working on that you need a little help with, did you get the help you needed? Did so and so did we make that happen? Are you okay? That's please acknowledge me. So it's being fully present with people, not on your phone, not on your computer. It's I see you. People want to work at a place where they're seen. 100%. They want to work at a place where when they come in, they're seen as valuable. You have worth and value. That's a best way to think about that first one. The second one is please inspire me. It's the word inspire. It's in sanctus. It means to breathe life into, right? So when somebody comes into the room, are you breathing life into them? Are you telling them what you do every day is having an impact on the bigger organization? So let's say your bookkeeper came in and said, "Hey, I developed this dashboard for you to see exactly where we're at with AR and AP. And you'll notice on here we've brought our AR down to less than 5% on the gauge on the dashboard." And they did that all on their own. Well, you should be celebrating that like crazy and say, when you did that, we're able to make better decisions. When you lower that rate to less than 5%, that's outstanding. Gosh, we're able to make good cash flow decisions as a company, which if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to do that. So thank you for that. I mean, that's inspiring. That says what you do affects all of us, right? Please inspire me. Third is please challenge me, right? So it's everybody wants to be challenged. And how do we develop people? We develop people by giving them something that's if they raise their hands, if they stood up and reached up, they'd miss it by this much. We give them things that are just out of their reach so that they have to jump for them. And they're going to miss it the first time, maybe, or the second time, even. And our job is to brush them off and say, hey, what'd you learn? Let's go through the process. Now try again. And that's in that leadership square, right? That's part of it. While they're doing and you're watching, you're going, nope, it's not it yet. Brush you off, try it again. If you're not developing your people, their learning curve goes flat, their head pops up, and they start looking for work somewhere else. Somebody that's going to develop them. It's going to challenge them, right? And I always say if their learning curve's going up, their vision's blocked. So they're not going anywhere because they're really happy about the fact that their learning curve is going up. So that's please challenge me. And then lastly is please empower me. And a lot of leaders miss this one. Empower means to give power away. Empower is not here. I want you to do this, and I'm going to micromanage you about, over it the whole time. That's not empowering people. Okay, that's micromanaging people. Empowering people is going, look, you've demonstrated the ability to do this. Here it is. I'm trusting you with this. get it done. If you run into any problems, let me know. But for the most part, it's on you. You're the one who's going to do this. And so I'm giving you the authority and the power to do it.
Love it.
So
Yeah, that's a super powerful tool. I like that. I like that a lot.
I love that. So acknowledge, inspire, challenge, empower.
Yep. Those are the 4. And if you do those 4 things, you'd be amazed at what it does to your culture. If everybody learns to see each other that way with those pieces of tape on their forehead.
I think one of the best ways you've been doing this, Tim, is through the Friday drive. That's where you've just kind of made the effort to post a weekly YouTube video unpacking a new framework, a tool, or maybe an old framework or a tool with an emphasis on application and maybe a great case study along with it. So I think I've seen you kind of doing some embodiment of that, even with us as coaches. And I know your clients are accessing that too, which is fantastic.
Which I don't know how good it is, but it's something I just do every week because it keeps me mentally sharp too. It might be for my own, it might be selfish that I do.
Oh, it's great.
So we'll see.
Keep doing it. Even if it's selfish, keep doing it. Taylor, should we transition to a slow burn session here?
I think a slow burn segment would be really good. Yeah. I think Tim would crush that.
This is our rendition of rapid fire questions, and what we found was that there's nothing rapid fire about them. And we had one of our guests say, "Hey guys, this is more of a slow burn, less of a rapid fire." So we're leaning into that branding there. And Tim, a lot of the 5 Capitals frameworks use matrices, right? They use paradoxes to kind of put us in the tension of the competing needs and demands of leadership. And so that's what we're doing here with our slow burn session. We're going to give you 2 options that feel like the answer is both and, but then you have to pick one.
I have to pick one.
Okay. You have to pick one. So you get a few seconds to pick, and then you get a little bit more time to explain why you picked what you picked.
Okay.
That sound good?
Yep. Sounds good.
Beautiful. Good. All right. First one is going to be this: being or doing? What's more important in leadership, being or doing?
To leadership or to my leadership?
Oh, we've never had anyone specify
if you want to make
it
it
that
personal,
way.
Or you just want to talk about it in general. So.
Taylor, dude, you tell me where you want to take it. I want
to hear from Tim's leadership.
I like that. Let's go. Yeah, personalize this as much as you can, Tim. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about knowing thyself. What Socrates say, know thyself. So we'll go with that. So doing, for me, it's doing, and I just described my time at my last few days at Seek and moving into coaching. I think the best, I meditate the best, I pray the best when I'm active as a leader. And I'm, what I demonstrate, hopefully the people who follow me will emulate, right? That's ultimately what we're out for. So again, it's a roll up your sleeves, not be afraid to get in the trenches with people. I'm not taking anything away from being. I think that's about being fully present, right? How can I be fully, where I'm not doing a ton of things and I'm with you. But I think actively doing something together, we can get a lot accomplished, and we can get a lot of learning exchanged while we're actually doing this stuff. So I learn by doing.
It's good. Results or relationships?
Relationships, hands down. Yeah, hands down. Because I believe that relationships comes before results. My thinking on this, it goes back to it's that vision statement for the football team, right? It's developing leaders of men through the pursuit of football. So it's about the person. It's about who they are, seeing them. It's all the ACE stuff that we just shared with them. And when they know that, they will go get the results. They will go win the games. They will go fight because they're doing it from a really good place of, I'm doing it for these people that are investing in me as leaders.
Values or vision?
Oh, this is a really tough.
It's a slow burn.
It's a slow burn.
And I can't say equal, huh?
It's like planks. It's like doing a plank.
You had to choose.
Well, they're 2 different things, right? I mean, because the vision is the picture of the future that produces passion in a person, right? And a little bit of fear, right? And where there is no vision, the people perish. They die. So nothing's going to happen without vision. But those values, left unchecked with no values, I think a company can run off the rails really, really quick, which might also lead to death, which is so bad. So how do you bring those two together? I can't answer that one. Okay, I'm going to say vision because it's a little bit higher order. It's at least we have what's at the top of the mountain, and the values will help us get there. Hopefully it's helpful, but I'm going to say
That's
vision.
great. That's great. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
It's a
Just
hard
thinking
one.
Brad putting
Gun to
him
your head.
in a hard
Vision.
spot, man. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to lay
geez.
awake at night on that one. That's good.
Yeah, we're gonna hold that over your head when we find out that like values are way more important. We're gonna be like, Tim led us astray, man.
They are the pillars that go in the ground that hold the house up. So I mean,
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, no, that's great. All right, we got a few more. All right, recovery or performance?
ooh, recovery or performance? That's about rhythm, right? That's about rhythm. So,
I love it.
I recovery is what. Oh, this okay. It's in my head, man. So
Get out your whiteboard, Tim.
no, yeah. So I want you to imagine I have a drum set in front of me, right? And I'm just banging away on the drums, going crazy, and there's no like break in between, right? It's performance, but it's just noise as performance. It's not until I put a pause in there that it becomes rhythmic, right? So 6-1, 3-1, 2-1, 8-1, whatever it is. But that one is what I would call recovery, right? Which is,
That's right.
let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pause. Scriptures would call that the Selah, right in the middle of the Psalms, which is so interesting. So without that, so what's more important to leadership? I'm going to say recovery, because without the pause, the performance will just become noise and chaotic. So
That's a great answer. I love that, and the imagery there is
So
awesome
good.
too. I got a clear picture. All right,
Mm.
culture or productivity?
Culture, yeah, culture by far. Productivity is only one component of culture. So remember, I was talking about culture is defined by how happy are our people, how productive are our people, do they have a sense of ownership? If it's only about productivity, you lose some of the joy, and you lose this sense of a bigger sense of I belong here, I'm contributing to something at a bigger level. So yeah, culture by far. Oh, I love this question. This is a good one. By far, profits. I'm going to tell you guys a story. So I walked into a men's bathroom at a football game. Okay. Two guys in suits at a football game, right? Standing at the urinal next to each other. I'm behind I'm in line. And one guy says to the other, "Hey, what were your revenues this year?" Another guy goes, 23 million, blah, 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 blah. And the other guy goes, "What were yours?" He goes, 47 million. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And they start, and they got their, collared shirts unbuttoned. There's a little Mr. T starter set, they turn around. I'm like, and all I wanted to ask at the time was, all right, 23 million, 47 million. How much of that are you keeping? Because it doesn't matter what your revenue is. What matters is how much you're holding on to, how much you're actually bringing back to the good of your people, the good of the company, to reinvest in new things and innovation, in acquisition of talent and whatever, right? Or just to give to your people as an incentive to keep working hard for the organization. Revenue, you can make $1 million and keep 900,000. You can make $47 million and lose 900,000 at the end of the day. So it's about profit for sure.
Crush, how do you feel after the slow burn? Do you need a quick recovery?
I got water. Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'm
Good,
hydrated.
good. Yeah.
Cool down for a minute there.
Crucial for like
Yeah.
gotta
We
recover.
made it through that. We made it through that. That was the tough part. Here we go.
Hope that's got
Yeah.
like some electrolytes in it, Tim. Okay, in the spirit of rapid fire, most important book you've ever read to you. Most important book to you.
Ragamuffin Gospel.
Oh wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a deep cut. There will be a lot of listeners who will
Won't
go
know what
check
that
it
is.
out. No.
Yeah, the
Go
Ragamuffin
Google that.
Gospel. It's a different take on the Christian life, and was very instrumental in how I see Jesus today, which is kind of different than a lot of people see Jesus, to be honest. So, because it just gives a perspective from the broken side, right?
So Brennan Manning, Ragamuffin Gospel. Go Amazon that, friends, and enjoy a different take on the story of Christianity and what it can mean for you. Book you're reading right now. Anything really exciting listeners should go check out.
Mind Shift by Erwin McManus. That's the book in my bag. I always ask leaders what book's in your bag, because you should always be learning. You should always be growing. You never have the corner on everything. So always challenge yourself in different areas. Mind Shift is about just that. It's about shifting your mindset on how you see the world, how you see challenges. And it's just such a beautiful write. There's also a series, a podcast on it as well that you can listen to, which are great. So, but Erwin McManus, Mind Shift. It's kind of rocking my world right now.
Love that. Love that. Need to check it out. I was told once, and I like/hate it because I like to be a finished product, but that's just not a thing. Is to never stop becoming. And just make that the goal. Never stop becoming, which is frustrating because the performance addict in me wants to be like, no, man, I'm good. So,
Right.
love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Parting thoughts, wisdom you'd like to share. Like, if you could share one thing with our listeners, what would it be?
Yeah, I love you and I'm for you. I love you and I'm for you. And you may say that sounds weird. You don't even know me, but I do, man. I wake up every day just thinking, again, that vision statement that I've had it for 30 years probably. And I've added to it recently, which is really interesting. So I added the front part, which is to see the inherent worth and value in people and to add life to every life my life intersects. And so that front part was not always there, but to add value to every life my life intersects is I want whether I'm speaking to the CEO at Google or P&G or wherever, or if I'm talking to the checkout clerk at the Quickie Mart. When I walk away, I want people to say, gosh, I'm different. I'm better because I spent time with Tim. And it doesn't always happen, right? There are times where I mess it up for sure, but it's the thing that keeps me in check. It's the thing that makes me get up every morning and go, man, I love doing what I'm doing. I love being alive in this. And by the way, it also helps you with career choices or places you want to work or that kind of thing. So find a vision statement, find that thing that gets you up out of bed every morning and says, I get to do this. I get to do this every day. And just know, from that vision statement that I have, I love you and I'm for you. And I can't wait to see what you do with your life. It's going to be amazing.
Love it.
No
That's
doubt.
great. That's great.
Tim, where can people find you online? Where do they go if they want to get more exposure to you, learn more about you and what you're doing?
I'm not very good at this part, but I'm not on Facebook. I got off a long time ago because it was too much noise. I couldn't handle it. I just don't have the mental cognitive bandwidth to handle what happens on Facebook. So I am on Instagram because I can throw up pictures of sunsets and alligators and whatever. That's on the personal side. On the business side, LinkedIn's the best place to find me. So you can find me there. You can find me on YouTube. If you want to look at the Friday Drive videos with the little nuggets and frameworks, you can go to the Friday Drive. Just go to Tim Urmston on YouTube, Urmston. I'm sure you'll have it somewhere, and because it's a weird last name and hard to spell.
Link to it.
But yeah, send people there and they can check that out too. And it's so LinkedIn and there are the two places. And then obviously 5capitals.net is our website. So you can get on and check out all of our coaches there. And hopefully find one that's right for you or somebody you want to connect with on there. So
that's great. That is great. Well, Tim, we seriously appreciate you coming on the show today. I am definitely better for getting this interaction with you. So
I appreciate you guys taking the time. I'm really grateful and humbled by this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we're super grateful. And all you Daily Leader listeners out there, please take a minute. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, follow us, do whatever it is on the social media world. Tim, I too got off Facebook in like 2015, and it's a big, scary place that I don't want to be. So I can relate to that. But for our listeners, go find us on all them social things, Instagram, YouTube, all those places. And we'll be back again next week for another episode of The Daily Leader.